Welcome back to Nightly Nonsense, where we try to make some sense out of the nonsense that I may or may not create. Hey, we're in Isaiah. We're looking at Isaiah 29. We read verses 11 and 12, and I challenged you to think about whether or not God, whether there's some things in your life that God has been convicting on you, and whether or not he would say, hey, listen, time's up. I'm going to turn you over to that which you're worshiping instead of me, right? And then I told you that I was going to challenge you on that and talk to you about that for a few minutes. So tonight, I want to talk to you again because this is important, right? God commands any other man's thing that's out there. He commands us to worship him, right? Worship him and him alone. Right? But it's a command that comes with free will. So it's kind of this crazy thing, right? You have the ability to choose whether you do it or not, but God commands us to do it. Therefore, if we're not doing it, we're sinning against God. Right? So you can choose not to do it, but you're going to be accountable for it. Right? So there's some things in free will, whether I have a Big Mac or a Whopper, I don't think God's up in heaven going, it's sin, unless he specifically said, don't ever have a Big Mac again, right? But there are things that we can choose free will, right? Which beach I go to, right? Where I go to eat, how I mow my lawn, all those kind of things. God's not up in heaven going like, hey, if you don't draw lines on your lawn with your lawnmower, you're wrong, right? It's not sin. But in this case, there are some things that God says, hey, you need to do this. Whether you choose to do it or not, you're still guilty of sin. There seems to be a misconception out there amongst people who really, truly aren't believing that it's sin, right? Like they think that whether they believe in God or not, right? If they choose not to believe in God, then if they do these things, it's not sin because they're choosing not to believe in God. No, the truth is, it is sin. It's still sin, right? Whether you choose to believe it or not. So God says, listen, I need you to worship me and me alone, right? Now, again, here's the question. Are you worshiping God and God alone? Are you giving your everything to God and God alone? I'm not talking about singing songs. I'm not talking about saying prayers. I'm not talking about rosaries. I'm not talking about confession. I'm not talking about Bible studies. I'm not talking about Sunday school. I'm talking about all of you, head to toe. Right? Like, so for me, I'm 6'2", or I was 6'2" at one time, right? It might be shrinking because they say that's what happens in old age, but 6'2", I'm hoping that that's somewhere around 74 inches, right? Of me, 74 inches. Are you giving all 74 inches of yourself to God? Like everything that you are you giving it to him? If you're not, if there's areas in your life where you say, nope, I'm going to keep this for myself. Nope, I'm going to do this, right? If there's areas where you are completely over the line, finances, I'm never asking God anything about finances, and they're going to run my life. My bank account runs my life. When it's full, I feel great. I can do anything. When it gets down, I got to work harder. I got to work more. I got to do more, right? And every time I have this goal of I need this much money in my bank account, when it gets, to that level, and I get there and I change the level, I got to keep having more and more, right? The problem with small g God worship is it's never satisfied, right? It's never satisfied. You got to keep giving more and more and more and more. It's funny. At one point, I was thinking about being a music teacher, right? I loved playing my saxophone, right? Was in the band room all the time. So I was learning other instruments, could play things. And like thought, I want to do this. Won an award at my senior year, and I could have gone anywhere in the country to any music college, the Arian Award, right? Could have gone anywhere for band. And I went to Houghton, paid a little bit of attention to their band program, and found out that, you got to sell yourself out. It's 11 hours of practice a day. 11 hours of practice a day. Right? No time for any fun. These people, 10, 11 o'clock at night, they're still practicing. First of all, That's not what I want to do, right? But second, there comes a point where, are you doing that? Are you worshiping? Do you find yourself at work 12 hours a day? And then when you're home, you're thinking about work. Do you find yourself worshiping something else? And what happens is this. Let me give you a practical example. When you're worshiping your kids, right? Lots of parents worship their kids, right? You know what happens when you worship your kids? Exactly what happened to my mom. You're the best mom in the world when you say yes, but the second you say no, you're no longer the best mom in the world. It's never enough. Kids never have enough. The $5 that we used to get to go to McDonald's, and we could get a whole bunch of stuff for $5 when I was a kid at McDonald's, right? It's never enough. It wasn't I gave you $5 yesterday. It's I need $5 today and $5 the next. It just never ends. So we need to pay attention to this, right? There comes a time when God says this, I'm going to turn you over to the idols that you're worshiping. If you're worshiping money, I'm going to turn you over to that. Money's going to run your life and it's going to destroy you, right? And then hopefully God says, at the end, you're going to realize that I was a better choice. I am God. But some people never get there, right? Same thing with your kids. Man, I'm going to worship my kids. I'm going to make them number one. Somewhere along the line, God says, I'm done with this. It's sealed. I'm not gonna continue to try to get your attention and try to get you to choose me. I'm gonna turn you over to that small case G God family, and I'm gonna watch what happens. Lots of people found out the hard way what happens when you worship family, your jobs, right? Finances, friendships, marriages, right? Church. This is what happens. So let me wrap this up. And then tomorrow night, I want to go on in this section, right? And God says there's going to come a point where I'm going to seal it up, where you are no longer going to have access to me or my word. I'm going to turn you over to the God you're worshiping. I'm going to turn you over to what you're worshiping. In that moment, there's no going back, ladies and gentlemen. There is no, as it starts to happen, right? So when Jerusalem was under siege, right? And the other people go, oh, they start crying out to God. Guess what? It's too late. It's too late in that moment. It's not that God ran away. It's not that God says, I'm going to turn you over to it. This is what you wanted. You're flirting with all these other gods. Then guess what? I'm going to give them to you. Right? Those are tough moments. So tonight I want to challenge you on this thought. What is it, again, that you're in danger of God turning you over to? What is it that what God is it that you're serving? Right? That God is saying, hey, I'm going to turn you over to this, right? I'm going to turn you over to this God, right? So chew on that. We'll come back tomorrow night and we'll talk a little bit more here on Nightly Nonsense.